Hitman is one of my absolute favorite game series, but even masterpieces have their flaws. And since I already made a video about one feature I loved in every Hitman game, which you guys really seem to enjoy, today we are doing the opposite. So today we are talking about one feature I truly hated from every single Hitman game. And yes, we will be treating the Hitman World of Assassination trilogy as separate entries again. Let's start as always with the very first Hitman game, Codename 47. I could complain about the fact that as a console player I hated that this game was never available on consoles, but honestly that would be nitpicking, especially since Hitman Contracts, a game from 2004, basically remade around 70% of the missions from Codename 47 anyway. The feature I actually hated was the gunplay and the controls. It feels like you're trying to steer a refrigerator that's holding a machine gun. The mouse and keyboard setup is clunky, aiming is imprecise, and half the missions feel more like a fight against the engine than against your actual targets. Maybe that's just me growing up on consoles and still being terrible with mouse and keyboard. But let's be honest, I think most people will agree with this point. The game may be the beginning of a legendary franchise, but it's definitely not one game I enjoy playing today. So let's move on to Hitman 2 Silent Assassin. This game introduced many important changes that shaped the series forever, like the rating system and the suspicion meter. These features finally showed you whether you were blending in or about to get corked, but the feature I hate the most is the inconsistent AI. In one mission you can walk right past guards in your suit, and in the next you get shot because you did one tiny thing wrong. The AI is chaotic, unpredictable and often unfair, which ruins many good stealth moments in this game. For example, you can't run while wearing a disguise without getting spotted, even if the guards are far away. Speedrunners found a trick that lets you run without being detected, but I only use it when I really need to, and it's a shame that this trick is basically the only way to move faster, especially in a game that already feels very slow. Now let's talk about Hitman Contracts. This game introduced several important changes that fixed a lot of things that bothered me in a Silent Assassin. We could finally run while disguised. The old chloroform bottle was replaced with a syringe that knocked people out much faster, and even the sneaking speed was improved, which I absolutely loved. But the feature I hated the most in this game is the lack of mission preparation. Contracts has a brilliant atmosphere and style, but the moment you start a mission, you're just thrown straight into it. No proper equipment selection like in the previous games. No meaningful planning, nothing. And what I miss even more is the classic briefing from Diana Burnwell. The only time you can even hear her voice is the target overview when you check who you're supposed to kill. No pre-planning, no loadout decisions, no, alright, how do I want to approach this? You basically start every mission blind. Only after you finish a level you can replay it and choose your equipment. But let's be honest, if you play the game for the first time, nobody's going to do that. So let's move on to Hitman Blood Money, which for many people is the true GOAT of the franchise. Honestly, there isn't much negative to say about the game. Maybe the slightly outdated graphics and controls, but that's about it. However, if I had to pick something, there's one thing that has always bothered me. Once you finish the game on any difficulty, you can't earn money anymore when you're playing the missions, and the notorious system completely stops functioning. Even if you go back and replay all the missions, you can still earn additional money, and those missions will load with the notoriety level you had at the exact point in your playthrough. The only way to reset everything and actually earn money again and use the notoriety system again is by starting an entirely new playthrough. Blood Money is iconic, but once you've beaten it, the fact that you can't earn any more cash really kills the motivation for doing an additional run on the same difficulty. Let's continue with Hitman Absolution, the game that split the fanbase right down the middle. This game actually has a special place in my heart because it was the first Hitman title I got to play on release day, and it was also the first game I ever pre-ordered in my life. You have no idea how hard it was to fight back then to convince my mother to pre-order it for me, but that's a story for another day. I think everyone knows what's coming. The feature I hated the most in this game was the disguise system. What used to be a massive advantage in earlier titles became the exact opposite here. Every cop, every NPC recognized you instantly. The disguise system is completely over the top. Every NPC wearing the same outfit suddenly becomes your personal FBI profiler. Wearing a disguise doesn't feel like an advantage anymore, it feels like a countdown until the game decides you to be busted. And what made it even worse was the fact that your disguise was tied to your instinct meter. You had to constantly spend instinct just to avoid being recognized. You could press a button to blend in or pretend to be busy, but the moment your instinct bar ran out, it was over. But that's not even all. What really annoyed me was this. If you try to do a suit only run, for example, and you start running, even if nobody sees you, the entire map somehow knows about it. But if you disguise and run in the exact same spot, nothing happens. So it's obvious, the disguise system is the thing I hate the most in this game, and honestly, it almost encourages you to play the entire game with a suit only run, instead of using the disguise at all. Now let's move on to the first part of the World of Assassination trilogy, Hitman Season 1. IO Interactive had big problems at the start because they decided to release the missions monthly. This caused a lot of negative reactions and almost ended the company completely. I could say that was the worst part of the game, but that wouldn't be fair. Once all the missions were available, the game was really good. I could also mention that it bothered me that Agent 47 is holding a briefcase on the cover of the game, even though that was never part of it. I could also say that I never liked the look of Agent 47. But the feature I hated the most was the always online and live service gating. It's a fantastic game, but the always online system was a nightmare. If the servers were down or you couldn't have access to your Wi-Fi or internet, you couldn't do challenges, make progress or earn XP. Also, a lot of content like elusive targets was time limited, so you could easily miss things. I am glad we finally got rid of this in the World of Assassination game. Even though the game still has an always online feature, you can now access most of the content offline too. Let's move on to Hitman 2. The game was great in terms of gameplay and added a lot of important improvements and modes. The gunplay was better and had improved sound design. The briefcase was finally in the game. You could hide in tall bushes, and it was clearer when you were blending into a crowd. They even improved Agent 47's face. But as much as I loved the game, I hated that the cutscenes were basically just still images instead of fully animated sequences because the budget was cut. The story deserved more weight. It shows one of the most important moments in the whole franchise. I say this because we were really spoiled by the CGI cutscenes in Hitman Season 1, and I was hoping for more like that. Still, there's not much to complain about. In terms of gameplay, this game did everything better than the game before. Let's come to an end with Hitman 3. What I hated the most was the fact that the game had no real gameplay improvements. Hitman 3 is a strong final to the World of Assassination trilogy, but gameplay wise it often feels more like a big DLC than a completely new game. There are hardly any new mechanics, very few real innovations, and much of it feels more like a repeat of Hitman 1 and 2. There were only a few genuinely new features like the camera you could use to hack locks or doors that could only be opened with a code. Despite this, the game shines in other ways. The story reached its peak, delivering one of the most memorable conclusions in the series. The atmosphere was incredible, with every location beautifully designed and packed with life. Even the cutscenes were improved, giving more weight and cinematic polish to key story elements. So while Hitman 3 may not be innovative much in terms of gameplay, it's still a fantastic final, just a surprisingly conservative one in terms of mechanics. That's it for the video, I hope you enjoyed it. What other features you've hated the most in each Hitman game? Let me know in the comments below. And if you want to see more videos like this, just tell me. Thank you for watching and see you the next time.